Namaste and welcome to Satsang. So welcome. If you haven't joined us before, you're more than welcome. And Satsang is the place where we come together to recognize what's real and permanent about ourselves. We are also this mind and body, this limited mind and body and this personality, but it isn't going to last forever. So Satsang is where we come to recognize that aspect of ourselves that is stable and permanent, reliable, and perhaps more importantly at the moment, that which isn't suffering about us and is not capable of suffering. And to do that, I have to help us to recognize what we actually really are. Sometimes all we need to do is to change our perspective slightly. And I have to tell you some very good news in accordance with that. And the good news is that there is nothing at all wrong with you, ever. And there could never be anything wrong with you, ever. It's important to recognize that if we are seeing something about ourselves that we're perceiving as a flaw or a defect, or something that we would rather get rid of, that it doesn't mean it's ever been true, that there is anything wrong with you, that you are less than the wholeness that you're perhaps seeking, that you're less than the perfection that maybe we're heading towards. And it's a common belief in almost every single human being that hasn't investigated it yet, that as a human being there is something fundamentally flawed about us. There is something that happened when we became a separate being, when we separated from the divine, or whatever we want to call it, the self. In our imagination only, we believe that something happened to us, that we're less than that perfection, that wholeness, that already complete and perfect love that is the real self. And many of us can come to Satsang, find ourselves in Satsang, really to try to match up with that, or to try to become that perfection or that wholeness, that completion. It certainly was like that for me, driven by a deep sense of unworthiness and a fundamental aspect of our personality saying that there is something inherently wrong with me as a human being, that there is something I need to fix about myself, and it's just absolutely not true. And this is really good news. And no matter how convinced we are that there is something wrong with us, that we are less than that perfection that we see exhibited in some beings, and perhaps we touch upon sometimes in our deepest meditation, it's never actually been true that you were this separate being, that you broke away from that wholeness, that you emerged out of that perfection and became this human being. You are that perfection already, that perfect love that is appearing as a separate human being, individual and unique, but not separate. Even if somehow you were separate, you still arose out of that wholeness. Anything arising out of wholeness must be made of wholeness still. So I can't continue to let you agree that there is something wrong with you, that there is any difference between yourself and that perfection. I can't agree with that inside, that feeling that is inside any human being anymore. I used to agree with it about myself and pretty much everybody else. But I had to come to investigate this, even this greatest of assumptions. If I really wanted to embrace what was true and what was already whole and complete, could I ever do that by seeing imperfection? Can I ever do that can I reach that totally non-judgmental place by judging myself? Can you reach that whole, complete perfection by seeing yourself as imperfect? Is that ever going to actually work? If you set off to try to find perfection inside yourself, that which is already all that it's ever going to be, can you ever achieve that if you're looking through the lens of misperception that you are flawed fundamentally? If you're trying to fix yourself completely, is that ever going to actually work if in reality there's nothing wrong at all, except for what we think is wrong, except for our vivid imagination as the self to perceive ourselves as flawed? Can you ever come to wholeness from a division inside yourself? Is there ever going to actually cause you to arrive? Or perhaps our self-realization is even simpler than we may feel, in that it's just a change of how we view ourselves and everything and everyone else. And that's good news. That's exciting. At least it was for myself when I saw it, because it was a change of perspective, a change of perception is very, very possible right now in this moment. If somehow you actually were a flawed human being, full of defects and anomalies that had to be wrinkled out, ironed out completely before you could realize the self, then that's bad news. Every example of a human being that has realized this perfection in themselves has always and totally come to see it within everybody else completely. To recognize what you really are, you can't continue also to perceive other beings as limited and imperfect. And I absolutely don't see anything wrong with you, even if you're insisting there is. I can't do that to you anymore. I don't want to do that to myself. You are myself. I am you. It's important then to start our satsang from the right place. Not from, even if there is some sense of unworthiness within us all, which there is at first, it doesn't mean it's true. So we can come to our satsang with a sense of, I would like to see things clearly. I would like to see what I actually am and what everything else is. Then it's going to be so much more achievable and so much easier and so much faster and so much less suffering than continuing forever trying to fix something that isn't broken actually. And I really hope these words are kind of penetrating some place inside you where you're just about ready to give up trying to fix yourself. And maybe daring enough to actually be willing to entertain this idea that there might not actually be anything wrong with you. Why then are we so convinced that there is? Would this be a useful thing to investigate? Well, it was for myself, definitely, and I'd like to just look into that for a moment before we go any further. Why then is every single human being convinced that there is something fundamentally wrong? Well, the root of it really is this sense that that we are a separate being. That at some point we broke off from this perfection and became this separate drop in the ocean. Because with that sense of being separate, not actually separate, but the sense of being separate, our imagination that it is so, comes a sense of lack, a sense of needing, a sense of wanting, a sense of feeling extraordinarily unsafe somewhere deep down in our being. And then a sense of trying to get home back to something which will never succeed because you're already that. And with the sense of being separate then comes a fixation, a fascination with a particular mind and body that you seem to be currently inhabiting. And begin to perceive that mind and body as ourself, and then to judge our worthiness, our lovability, if that's even a word, our worthiness even for awakening from how that particular mind and body are doing. Can we take the state of our mind, our body, our emotions, our relationships, our career, our awakening, even as evidence of how worthy we are? Can we take something that is always evolving and changing as evidence of how changeless we are actually? Can we take something that is capable of feeling unworthy, like a personality or a mind or an egoic sense of self, and use it to assess our progress in waking up to that which is never capable of being anything less than whole? Is that really a valid way? And what happens if we stop taking our mind and our body and our manifest world, my relationships, my finances, my career, my path to awakening, the state of my mind, the state of my life, the state of my house, the state of all of it? What happens if we stop taking that as evidence for how we're actually doing? Begin to recognize that that which changes the manifestation of the mind and the body, our personality, our likes, our dislikes, our goals, our dreams, our perceived flaws and faults, are always going to be improving. That's what manifestation does. It begins and it starts and it continues forever as soon as the mind and body appear. From the first breath that the baby takes to the last one, manifestation is this ever unfolding sculpture. As a human being, you are that divine self already appearing as a human being, and in the appearance, in the human beingness, there's constant evolution, constant becoming more, becoming higher, becoming more evolved, constant motion towards being more loving, more compassionate, more kind to other beings, towards recognizing truth and moving away from lower or perhaps more limited expressions of love. And that's going on for every human being, whether they recognize themselves clearly to be the self or not. Evolution of the mind and body don't just stop because you come to clearly recognize what you are. It's always deeper seeings, deeper revelations, deeper epiphanies. It's always more ability to love. And perhaps we can stop imagining this finish line in our mind, this set of qualities, ways of being, attributes that we associate with being the self, and drawing this imaginary finish line in our head and saying, well, I'm not there yet because I don't look like this. Is it ever going to, when you watch what's changeful and evolving, is it ever going to make you feel more like that which is not evolving in the unmanifest, pure awareness, that which isn't changing? It can appear in these two aspects. It can be this unmanifest, completely total, whole and perfect being that's invisible and intangible. And it can also appear as all of this, including your life, you. And if manifestation is more like an ongoing, ever refining piece of clay on the potter's wheel that's never finished, and it's always becoming more and more beautiful, and there's no limit to how much more refinement we can experience, then can we actually really take any arbitrary point in time? This is where I am now, and this is where I want to be. And because I'm not already here, I'm concluding that I'm not worthy enough, I'm not good enough. Because I don't yet always exhibit the qualities I've come to associate with awakening: love, compassion, wisdom, non-judgmental behavior, all of that. Because I'm not already feeling perfect peace, love, and joy on this unfoldingness that's happening in the mind and body, can I really still conclude, can you really still conclude that you're not already that? And why do you want to keep doing that to yourself? Is that really the way you're going to find peace? These beings that exhibit the qualities that we're looking for, that we want to mirror in ourselves, it didn't arrive at that by coming to this finish line. They didn't actually ever arrive at a finish line. They just relaxed into the unfolding that's always improving. What if right now, the rest of your life, and has always been, in fact, your mind, your body, your emotions, your relationships are always on a constant upgrade, effortless, constant upgrade. And maybe our only role is to get out of the way of that process by letting go of this finish line or looking at some arbitrary point. If you and I set off on a journey together, if we went on a road trip and let's say we were going to go 400 miles, and after 50 miles, we were both sat there in the car really, really upset because we weren't there yet. And it's pointless to say, I'm not who I want to be, because I look at my qualities, my attributes, and say, I'm not there yet. Maybe those attributes will manifest instantaneously when you kind of embrace what I'm trying to get across here, that you're an ever unfolding sculpture. Would you ever look at a flower in your garden and say that because it's not fully blooming yet, it's unworthy of being a flower? Isn't it already a perfectly opening rosebud or flower or whatever it is in particular? Would you ever look at a sapling that's going to be a mighty oak tree one day and say, we should just dig it up and get rid of it, it's no good because it's not already an oak tree? Or can we embrace the beauty of how it is right now without assigning good and bad and wanted and not wanted qualities to whatever it's appearing as in manifestation? And yes, we all want more sattvic qualities in satsang. We want peace, we want bliss, we want joy, we want love, we want kindness, we want compassion for ourselves and others, wisdom, clarity, all the things that come traditionally with that awakened state, a condition, for want of a better word. But are we ever going to actually achieve that by looking at how the manifestation is in a snapshot moment and saying, this is not it. I am not it. I am not how I should be. And at some point, you're going to have to step out of doing that and admit that who and how you are right now is perfect. And there's one little trick to tell if who and how you are right now is perfect or not. And that is it how you are right now? Yes, well, then you must be perfect already. Exactly how you're supposed to be is how you are right now. Why do these negative traits then and things that we would like to get rid of about ourselves keep manifesting if we are already so perfection? Well, because we are already the infinite self, and if we insist I am not how I should be yet, then the entire universe has to agree with us. Yes, you're not how you should be. Here's some more self-judgment, here's some more self-blame, and here's some more unworthiness to prove to you that you're not how you should be. Remember, you're not actually a limited separate being, even if you're convinced that you are. You have infinite power to disturb yourself and delude yourself as long as you want to. I'm just kind of saying we could stop that in this moment and say, wherever I'm at is wherever I'm at, and I don't have to judge myself. If I stop judging myself, then I might have a taste of that already so completeness that is here right now. So maybe this peace that we're looking for is a lot closer or immediately available in this moment. Each unique and individual but not separate human being is already a complete expression of the divine appearing as a human being. And when you come to see yourself that way, you will be able to see everyone that way and everything. No matter what it looks like, it is the self disguised as something else. And until you're willing to somewhere inside yourself admit that about yourself first and foremost, there won't be any peace ever. Even 20 years from now, if we took how your body and mind are appearing then, there'll be more peace then, there'll be more love, more joy. But if you still haven't been able to accept how you are right now, you'll still be trying to travel. So this road trip is infinite, and we can begin to enjoy it. We can begin to enjoy however the body and mind are, however our emotions are right now. If we zoom out a little bit and say, well, wherever this body and mind are at is where they're at, and I've probably had many of them before in this long-standing dream I've had that I've been a separate being. And in all those previous mind and bodies, I've exhibited all qualities, good, bad, and ugly, just as some other beings are as well right now. Doesn't make us any less the self. And just if you are exhibiting, radiating love and compassion and wisdom to the world, that doesn't make you any more the self than you are right now. It's a basic fact that you cannot be imperfect, ever. And we can either continue to argue with that, or we can be willing to embrace maybe it's true. And what happens when I ask, maybe, is this true, actually? It doesn't mean we're going to become arrogant and just put our feet up spiritually. We're always going to want to see clearer and deeper, and that's part of the fun of being a human being. Still continuing now, even for me, and for every awakened being that you'll ever come across, they would never say there is a finish line. And it's part of the fun of being a human being. You can recognize your own perfection and also continue on this road trip from perfection to perfection. And every stop along the way is perfection. And when you see it this way, peace is available right now in this moment. When you're willing to look at yourself this way, there can be a great love that arises inside for yourself. And then that love will want to see everyone else that way too. Or maybe you already see everybody else that way. It's just yourself that you're berating. And that is the essence, the hallmark of the awakened condition, is no longer wanting to argue with what is. And what is about you already is perfect, regardless of what your mind may be saying. To think that it could be other than that is the misperception that we've all been suffering from for such a long time. But now could be a good time to stop that. What if I already am what I'm searching for? What if those qualities emerge spontaneously upon stopping denying my own innately perfect self? What if I stop trying to make my body and mind look like I want them to look like before I'll admit that I am the self? This is a right here and a right now opportunity for self-realization. It's never going to be any more possible than it is in this moment to admit your own perfection. And I'm not talking about, phoning up everyone you know and go, did you know I am the perfect self? I just mean admitting inside yourself that trying to get to perfection the way that maybe you're trying isn't really the most effective way. It has to come back to a seeing, doesn't it? A recognition of what already is right now about you, rather than continuing to travel. You can travel, just travel for the fun of it. Have this mind and body for the fun of it, rather than making it a fix them up project, or a DIY thing. And then see what happens to them when you just stop judging your own mind and body. See what happens to your life and your relationships and everyone else around you. So if anybody would like to ask a question, I have 2 questions already emailed in, which I will address first. So I'll take another 4, up to 4 questions from people watching now live. If you would like to ask a question or to share, you can do so by clicking on the participants section at the bottom of your screen. I can never remember this bit. And scrolling down to the bottom of the participants section and clicking on raise hand, and it will let me know that you want to ask a question. So I'll start with these 2 that have been emailed in. So the first one says, at a certain point, nearly every time I meditate, I start to see a purple amorphous spot that moves in my direct line of vision with eyes closed. What could this mean? So I start to see a purple amorphous spot that moves in my direct line of vision with eyes closed. What could this mean? Well, probably that it's just a purple amorphous spot. There are certain traditions of meditation where seeing a particular thing, there is a tradition where seeing the blue pearl, there's all kinds of different ways of meditating that we're looking for a specific phenomenon to happen in our meditation. It's probably some manifestation of some energy moving or something like that. I wouldn't give it too much meaning. Much more effective is to be aware of the awareness in which that purple spot is moving, of the real self in which that phenomenon is arising. It doesn't mean you're doing anything right in particular if something happens. We can, with the power of the infinite self, we can make anything happen or appear or disappear. I've had some weird and wacky stuff happen in meditation that perhaps we'll go into another time, but in the end it's going to be much more beneficial and direct for the recognition of what you really are, to begin to see even these subtle phenomena are coming and going even. And what is perhaps going to give you more peace, more love, more sense of wholeness is to recognize the being that is watching the purple spot is even more important. All of us as human beings have this fascination with phenomena and things that are moving, especially the positive things that begin to happen as we start to meditate more directly. We begin to have all kinds of feelings, and good and bad and ugly, and wonderful and weird things happen. So I wouldn't really give it any meaning, to be honest. I'm not trying to burst a bubble, but we could go on chasing phenomena forever, and we've been hypnotized by them, by thinking they're the most important thing forever. But no phenomena, nothing that comes or goes, even in deep meditation, is going to last forever. There's only you that's going to last forever. So I hope that helps. Okay, so we'll go to the second question. Okay, so this one says, currently my role as a wife and of two boys, a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old, has been wonderful. Along the path I have noticed more peace and acceptance. However, one thing or obstacle I often encounter somewhat recently, which I want to work on, is my anger, or sometimes more intensely rage. I've never hurt my toddler, but sometimes I feel like I can and I want to. I sometimes feel very ashamed of these feelings, and sometimes my toddler can trigger these feelings by doing very little, like dropping food on the floor after saying not to, or hurting his brother sometimes without meaning to. I also feel anger towards my husband sometimes, but the rage I get is often triggered by my toddler. The rage is something I have hardly experienced before children, but every time I experience it, I feel guilt and shame, especially when my reaction feels so out of order and I feel so depleted afterwards, and often feel like I'm a terrible mother. Any suggestions for when the anger or rage is felt would be so appreciated, so that I don't react so quickly and regret doing or saying anything. Namaste. This is exactly what we've been talking about today, isn't it? This thing arises that we would like to get rid of. This thing happens that we would like to move away from. And the shame that comes from it afterwards is this deep-rooted sense that this shouldn't be happening because it means I'm not good enough, I'm not adequate enough. So it's something that's happening to your mind and body. It is not anything to do with you. However, of course, we would like to perhaps have our body and mind express in a more loving way. So we can start, the first thing I would say is to accept what I've been saying already this morning, that you're never going to come to feel whole and perfect by judging and blaming. And saying that you should not be this way, which is what shame and guilt are saying. Shame says I'm not who I'm supposed to be. I don't deserve to feel happiness when I am this way, or something like that. And we're never going to come to a sense of wholeness that way. Start by admitting your perfection, even just to yourself inside, even though you don't feel it. That you must be the same perfection as the self. And then when this anger arises, it's whether it's rage or anger. Anger is really a sense that we can't get what we want, that we feel blocked from what we want. And as you wake up to realize what you actually are more and more, then you're going to have to go through this switch over from trying to get what you want from the outside world to switching over to the inside world. So I'd really suggest looking at what is it that you want in that moment when the anger or the rage is triggered. And if you can come to see it's not about wanting to change your outside world. It's there's some idea inside that what's happening in your environment in that moment with your toddler or husband or whichever way it's playing is stopping you from getting something you want. So what is it that you want in that moment? And if you really look at that, it'll be something like, I want to feel peace. I want to feel loving. I want to feel more compassionate. I want to, feel more like the awakened state. And in that, when you finally identify what you actually want, then you can say, well, is it true I need to get it from outside? And is it true that anything happening in my outer world, anything happening at all to my mind and body, can they stop me from feeling this particular way? When you really look at it, what you want and what you feel blocked from getting when these triggers happen, it'd be something that you can get much more effectively from the inside. So if something happens in my outer world and I feel it's disturbing my peace, that's because I'm still trying to get peace from this perfect set of circumstances. I'm still trying to juggle my outer world to make it look like this way. And when it's this way, then I'll feel at peace. So if you can see that this is happening so that you can switch over how you get these things. Let me see if peace isn't already here inside this moment. Starting from my own perfection, seeing if peace isn't already here, then you can feel peace. If that's what it is that you're wanting, it might be a sense of wanting to be loved or approved of or something like that. But whatever it is, you're being asked now, this is why this emotion is getting stronger, because trying to get it from outside is working less and less. And it never really worked anyway. Everyone else is also seeking all these things: love, joy, peace, understanding, feeling approved of, feeling safe, feeling secure. So it's just now you're being called to look from that from the inside. Is it really true that any circumstance that happens outside in my world can make me feel disturbed or unsafe or unloved? Start from your perfection. Find out what you want in that moment. It's usually some inner feeling. Even if it's like, I want my toddler to behave better. Well, why do you want that? Well, because I'll feel better when they do. It's really what's going on inside all of us. Even if we look at why we want awakening, it's because we want to feel better, if we're honest. And then see if it's not already there. You can use a question: is it really true I'm not already peaceful, or something? I'm not already loved? Or is it really true I have to even find security or acceptance or whatever it is that we're looking for? You cannot judge your worthiness as a human being or as the self because this thing is arising. It's just never going to bring you peace that way, is it? from my own pathway, I had to deal with a lot of anger, a lot of anger. Anytime anything ever seemed to interrupt my satsang, there would be this intense anger, you know, my practice, or and I had to come to turn inside as well. Everything I'm looking for outside is available in my being, as my being, as my real being. And this is getting bigger and getting worse now as you wake up, because you're being asked to switch over to a more efficient, a more effective way to get what you want, and that's to look inside. Well, I hope that's helpful. It's really, really common, and it's really, really fixable right now, just with a shift of what do I want, and do I really have to get it from out there? Is there not a more effective way? And is it true that I even have to get it actually inside? Okay. So we'll go to Megan whenever you're ready.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi. Yeah, good. Well, good since I've been on the Satsang. Thank you for that. I might ask a very obvious general question. There's a specific question, but kind of put it into context. If I was to say to someone, there's nothing wrong with me, and I'm thinking of a particular person, someone in particular, they would call me narcissistic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this particular person there's a dynamic where if there's a dynamic going on between the two of us, and I don't take the whole brunt of that it's my fault, the other person feels extremely defensive, and that she's taking on the whole thing, right? So that's the dynamic. Could you talk a little bit about the difference between someone who's narcissistic, not seeing any imperfections, and what you're talking about in this satsang?
Yeah. It really comes down to what you mean when you say I, doesn't it? If a separate sense of self, or if an egoic sense of self said, you know what, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm totally perfect, that's often been quite a destructive thing, hasn't it? It's often been quite something that the world hasn't ever forgotten about when that's occurred. And that's perhaps why we all resist admitting the perfection that's the real being that we actually are, through some sense of that. You know, that if I actually finally admit it, I'll go nuts or power crazy, or I'll become so arrogant, or something like that inside us. But it's like to not admit the perfection that you really are. It is like to not admit that the sky is blue, you know, when it's not cloudy, or to not admit that ice is cold. You know, it makes no sense to deny how things actually are. And the more that you embrace what you actually are, which is something already whole and complete, you're probably never going to shout it from the rooftop. In fact, only kind of teachers end up doing that in a way. It's a very private inner thing, admitting that. And then it begins to change the dynamic of these type of relationships, where there's been some, okay, if I act this way, then you feel better. You know, if I admit blame here, you feel better, you feel more justified, and then you feel more safe as a human being. And we get into these patterns, don't we, that just kind of go on forever. And we don't have to actually ever say anything to another being, and it's probably not a good idea to go to them and say, you know what, I am the ever perfect self. You know, it's It's probably not a good
Satsang.
idea at all. You know, in Satsang, obviously, it's a great idea, but you know, not in our general life. But just to be willing to recognize that inside, then the whole dynamic of the relationship is going to change, because there isn't this push-pull thing going on between two egos anymore. One being in the relationship or the friendship or whatever it is doesn't need anything at all from the other being anymore. I'm not looking to get security or approval or to feel liked or loved or accepted by this other being, because I feel that way already more and more. And in my not needing anything from this other being at all, they're much more free to be less defensive themselves. And it's kind of a privilege in a way. The more you've seen what you actually are, the more you can perhaps be the only person that they'll ever meet that is not demanding anything of them. Or perhaps, as we were just saying with the previous question, we recognize where we are still wanting something from them, and we can sort of move away from doing that. You know, you can kind of look at, what do I think I need from this other being? Do I need them to like me, and is that why I'm willing to kind of accept? Do I need to feel approved of, and that's why I'm willing to kind of accept something inside myself that doesn't feel right anymore? Can you get a sense of it? And you don't need to say what it is that you feel you need, but there'll be something, approval or security, or you know, when this being is nice to me, I feel more worthy, or I feel safer, or we've got some very basic drives as a human being that we're looking to fulfill. Nothing wrong with them, but it's just this switch over happening, isn't it, where you're sort of very acutely aware where you're still looking for something from this other being, and it's wanting to switch to a higher way, where you find it within yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It all came to a very kind of intense volcano today, but in a really positive way. So this was perfect timing. So thank you.
Yeah. But for myself, the more I was willing to recognize what I already am, the more acutely I was aware of where I'm as being what I am not. You know, where I'm still trying to be someone getting something from someone else.
Yeah,
and that was like,
very...
oh my goodness, that's my entire life. That's my life, actually. But just to see it, you start to move away from it, and where something isn't functioning very well in a relationship, where there's still two egos butting heads, you know, and you don't need to change the other person, but you can change your own perspective, and that will have an influence over that other being. You know, they can't quite be as defensive around you anymore, or as demanding, or something like that. You know, it just begins to soften, because you're intuitively, every being can sense whether you're demanding something of them energetically or not.
Yeah,
you all absolutely know that. You can just feel it. You can just go, I just don't like that person, or I just do really like them. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Very good.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Good question. Okay, Jay, whenever you're ready. Can you hear us, Jay? There we go.
Can you hear me? Am I still muted?
It's very, very quiet. Can you?
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, just about. It's quite quiet.
Oh,
there we go.
I'll try and speak really loud.
It's okay as it is now, actually. Yeah, sometimes Zoom goes a little bit. Anyway.
Okay. Thank you for the satsang. Why is it that during this process, I can, no one's done anything to me, nothing's happened, but I just feel like crying, which I do, but I don't feel sad either. I don't understand it. I just allow it, thinking that maybe it's the body wanting to release stored energy or something, but it's puzzling.
Yeah, it was the same for me. There was this a period where I was just crying an awful lot, and it wasn't a joy crying, and it wasn't fear or anything like that. It was just it was a release, and there was the clearer it got that I'd always been safe and had always been loved, and that I'd imagined all those things, you know, that I wasn't already safe and secure and worthy, and the clearer it became that that was true, the more there was this letting go of this tremendous angst that must have been there for a very long time, tension in the body or something, you know, that huge relief that I didn't even have to look for those things, you know, that even a release from this sense that I was going to come to an end. I hadn't really realized just how traumatic that had been on every, you know, every part of my being, right down to the cells, you know, this constant feeling of dread or something. So there was a real relief and release going on for quite some time. The kind of outcome of that was the body just relaxed more eventually and just let go, and everything just seemed to flow better. It wasn't any sort of emotional state that I could say. It was just a seeing clear that I was always okay, that all of my dreaming that I wasn't okay was just that, a dream, you know, as it comes clearer that that's just never been true. It's even though it seems extraordinarily true, of course, at the time, it just begins to, sometimes it will come out as tears, or you know, sometimes the body would shake, and laughter, and you know, all kinds of things, stretching, yawning, sneezing, all sorts of ways. It was just releasing something, some energetic. It was almost like, it's going to sound crazy, I know, but my body just didn't know how to relax, and it had to relearn how to do that again and let go of this tension. I don't know if that kind of resonates with you inside.
Yes, I was just going to say, everything you've said just totally resonates. So it's good to get some clarity on that. And like you alluded to, in the beginning, it was more frequent,
Yeah.
but there seems to be gaps now, and then every now and then something will come up. And yeah, thank you.
It's just like if you ever watched a scary movie or something and you don't realize till the movie finished just how tense you were. It's only when it finished and you go, oof, you know, that's, and then we've just been living like that for so long, haven't we? And then suddenly we realize, you know, don't have to exert this tremendous amount of energy towards trying to make myself whole. Then there's just this releasing of it on every level, you know, spiritually, physically, emotionally, all of it, you know, just more. I mean, this is the slowing down and stopping that we've heard described, you know, but sometimes it's a very physical process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Lovely. Okay, well, we will leave it there for today, and thank you for joining me today. Namaste. I hope that you're all resting in your own perfection. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.